in the heart of a tranquil, culturally vibrant village. Nestled between rolling hills and a winding river, life moved to the rhythm of age-old traditions. The morning sun painted the mud brick homes in golden hues, and the air was alive with the sounds of roosters crowing, children laughing, and vendors setting up their stalls at the bustling market. This village, though modest, brimmed with warmth and the kind of familiarity that wrapped around its inhabitants like a comforting embrace. Among its people was Tokoyo, a young woman known for her radiant smile and tireless spirit. Orphaned as a child, Tokoyo was raised by her grandmother, a revered midwife whose wisdom was sought after by all. Tokoyo inherited not only her grandmother's skillful hands, but also her fierce determination to face life's challenges head-on. Every morning, she could be seen weaving vibrant fabrics by the river, her laughter blending harmoniously with the gurgling stream. Her handiwork, cherished far and wide, had become a source of pride for her family. Tokoyo shared her home with her younger brother Kofi, a spirited boy with an unquenchable curiosity about the world. Their bond was unbreakable, forged through years of shared struggles and triumphs. Yet, despite the love that enveloped their household, whispers of envy lingered in the shadows. Senna, Tokoyo's childhood friend, had grown distant over the years. Her heart seemingly hardened by jealousy of Tokoyo's undeniable grace and talent. Unbeknownst to Tokoyo, a storm was brewing, one that would intertwine the threads of envy, the supernatural, and the unknown in ways she could never have foreseen. It all began with an old, ornate mirror, a gift that seemed too precious for its humble origins. It began on the evening of Tokoyo's 21st birthday, a night meant for celebration, but one that would alter her life forever. Her grandmother had arranged a modest gathering of close family and friends, the air filled with the scent of spiced stews and freshly baked flatbread. Tokoyo had spent the day weaving a vibrant shawl for the occasion, her heart light and her spirits high. But just as the sun dipped behind the hills, casting the village in a warm amber glow, an unexpected guest arrived at their doorstep. The visitor was Ibo, a wealthy merchant who had long been a silent admirer of Tokoyo's beauty and skill. His intentions were unveiled with little subtlety. He had come to propose marriage. While the villagers whispered in awe of his riches, Tokoyo felt a cold dread seep into her heart. Ibo was known not for kindness, but for his arrogance and quick temper. His presence alone darkened the festive mood, and his demand, thinly veiled as a proposal, left no room for refusal. Tokoyo's grandmother, despite her wisdom, found herself torn. Ibo's wealth could lift their family from a life of hardship, providing opportunities for Tokoyo and Kofi that otherwise seemed out of reach. But Tokoyo, her heart heavy with indignation, refused to be reduced to a bargaining chip. "I'm not a commodity to be traded for silver," she said firmly, her voice trembling but resolute. Her rejection, however, ignited a firestorm. Ibo's ego was bruised, and his face darkened with fury. "You dare refuse me?" he spat, glaring at her with venomous eyes. "Mark my words, Tokoyo, you will regret this insult." His words sent a shiver through the gathering, and he stormed out, leaving behind a suffocating silence. The days that followed were fraught with tension. Tokoyo's grandmother pleaded with her to reconsider, warning of Ibo's influence and the wrath he could bring upon their family. Tokoyo's younger brother Kofi clung to her side, his wide eyes reflecting her own fears. As the village murmured about Ibo's threats, another shadow loomed closer. Senna, Tokoyo's estranged childhood friend, seemed to take pleasure in her turmoil. "You think you're too good for him," Senna sneered one day, her jealousy as sharp as a blade. "You'll see where pride gets you, Tokoyo." Tokoyo's world, once so stable, now teetered on the edge of chaos, and her reflection in the ornate mirror, a recent gift from a mysterious stranger, seemed to take on a life of its own, staring back at her with an intensity that sent chills down her spine. The days following Tokoyo's rejection of Ibo were a storm of trials that tested her resolve. True to his threat, Ibo began wielding his influence to punish her family. Merchants who had once purchased her woven fabrics suddenly turned their backs, murmuring about debts they dared not risk incurring. The well-worn path to the market became a gauntlet of whispers and sidelong glances, her name spoken in hushed tones tinged with pity or scorn. The pressure mounted within her own home. Tokoyo's grandmother, usually her unwavering pillar of support, began to crumble under the weight of Ibo's retaliation. "You've brought shame upon us, Tokoyo," she lamented one evening, her voice heavy with despair. "Do you think pride will feed us or send Kofi to school? You must make peace with him." Tokoyo's heart ached, torn between her love for her family and her own sense of dignity. She spent sleepless nights staring at the mirror, the ornate frame catching the dim light of the oil lamp. At times, her reflection seemed to shimmer unnaturally, as if the mirror held secrets beyond her comprehension. Ibo's attacks didn't stop at economic sabotage. Rumors began to spread, insidious lies suggesting that Tokoyo had been involved in dark, forbidden practices. It was whispered that her beauty was unnatural, that her success with weaving was aided by spirits. These tales, seeded by Ibo and stoked by Senna, found fertile ground in the superstitious hearts of the villagers. One fateful evening, Tokoyo returned home to find the village elders waiting. They sat in a grim circle, their faces stern. "Tokoyo," one began, "we have heard troubling things. If you have nothing to hide, you will submit to a cleansing ritual to prove your innocence." Though furious at the injustice, Tokoyo's voice remained steady. "I've done nothing wrong, and I will not allow lies to dictate my life. Do what you must, but know that truth cannot be bent to your will." The cleansing ritual, held in the village square, was a public spectacle meant to shame her. Tokoyo endured it with her head held high, her defiance a quiet act of rebellion. Her strength inspired a few sympathizers in the crowd, like Nana, the soft-spoken herbalist, who whispered to her afterward, "The truth is on your side, Tokoyo. Hold fast to it." But Ibo and Senna were relentless. Senna, emboldened by her envy, grew bolder in her taunts. One evening, as Tokoyo returned from the river, she found Senna blocking her path. "Still clinging to your stubborn pride, Tokoyo?" she sneered. "Even the gods won't save you from what's coming." Tokoyo ignored her, but the ominous words lingered. Her isolation deepened. Even Kofi, her beloved brother, began to pull away. Frightened by the mounting hostility and the superstitions that seemed to have taken root even in their own home. One night, while Tokoyo sat weaving by the dim glow of a lantern, the mirror's surface seemed to ripple. Her reflection stared back, but something was wrong. The eyes were too sharp, the expression too knowing. She leaned closer, her heart pounding, and the reflection smiled, cold, mocking, and not her own. Panicked, Tokoyo covered the mirror with a cloth, her breath coming in ragged gasps. But the incident haunted her. Whispers in the village about her supposed dealings with spirits took on a terrifying new weight. Was she truly cursed? Or was the mirror something more sinister? Despite her fear, Tokoyo refused to bow to despair. She poured her energy into her craft, weaving patterns of defiance and hope into her fabrics. Her few supporters, like Nana and a kind-hearted blacksmith named Kwame, began to speak out on her behalf, though their voices were small compared to the chorus of condemnation. But the challenges kept coming. The village chief, under pressure from Ebo, declared that Tokoyo's family would be fined heavily for the dishonor she had brought. Her grandmother, frail and worn, fell ill under the strain. Tokoyo worked tirelessly, caring for her grandmother, tending to Kofi, and trying to find a way to pay the unjust fine. One evening, Kwame visited her, his voice low but urgent. "Tokoyo, there is talk of something darker. Ibo has been meeting with a priest from the neighboring village. They plan to use the spirits against you to prove their lies. Be careful." As the moonlight streamed through the cracks in her home, Tokoyo sat before the covered mirror, her resolve hardening. "If this mirror holds the truth of what is happening," she whispered, her voice trembling, "then I will face it. I will not let lies destroy me or my family." Uncovering the mirror, she stared into its surface, determined to confront whatever lurked within. The reflection shifted, the shadows coalescing into a figure that wasn't her own. A voice, soft yet menacing, filled the room. You seek the truth, Tokoyo, but can you bear the cost of knowing it? Her journey, she realized, was only just beginning. The village was eerily quiet the night it happened, as if even the crickets had been silenced by what was to come. Tokoyo had spent the day caring for her ailing grandmother, the weight of their struggles pressing heavily on her. When Kofi hadn't returned from the river by dusk, worry gnawed at her. She left her weaving unfinished and set out with a lantern, its faint glow cutting through the thick darkness. She found Kofi near the old shrine by the river, surrounded by 3 men she recognized instantly, Ebo and 2 of his loyal guards. Her brother's small frame trembled as Ebo loomed over him, his voice cold and laced with menace. "Perhaps your sister will reconsider," Ebo sneered. "When she sees what her defiance costs those she loves." Rage and fear surged through Tokoyo. "Leave him alone," she shouted, her voice slicing through the still night. The men turned toward her, their shadows stretching long and ominous under the moonlight. Ebo smirked, his confidence unshaken. "You've brought this on yourself, Tokoyo. All you had to do was accept my proposal. Instead, you've chosen disgrace." Before she could reach Kofi, one of the guards pushed her back, sending her stumbling to the ground. Ebo leaned down, his voice a venomous whisper. "Perhaps the village will believe what they see next, that you are a curse, a danger." With that, he raised his hand, signaling the guards to throw Kofi into the river. The world seemed to freeze as Kofi's terrified scream echoed in her ears. Without hesitation, Tokoyo scrambled to her feet and dove in after him, the icy water swallowing her whole. Her hands searched frantically in the murky depths until they found his small, trembling body. With every ounce of strength, she dragged him to the surface and onto the riverbank. Kofi clung to her, sobbing, but Ebo and his men were already gone, their cruel laughter fading into the night. Tokoyo held her brother tightly, her own tears falling silently as she realized the depth of Ebo's malice. He wasn't just intent on ruining her reputation, he was willing to destroy her family to get his way. Back at home, Tokoyo sat beside Kofi as he slept, her heart heavy with despair. The villagers would believe anything Ebo said, especially if they thought Kofi's near drowning was part of some supernatural curse tied to her. She felt powerless against the lies, the hatred, and the fear that had consumed her once beloved community. As she stared into the firelight, her reflection in the mirror caught her eye. It shimmered faintly, as if calling to her. When she approached, the surface rippled, and the same haunting figure appeared. This time, it spoke with an edge of urgency. "You cannot fight him alone. Look deeper, Tokoyo. Your strength lies in what you've always known, but never embraced." The words were cryptic, but sparked something within her, a glimmer of hope. The next morning, Nana, the herbalist, arrived unannounced with a small satchel of herbs. "I heard what happened," she said softly. "Your spirit is stronger than his cruelty. Trust in it, and remember, you're not as alone as you think." Tokoyo's fingers tightened around the satchel, her eyes meeting Nana's. It was a small gesture, but it reminded her that not everyone had abandoned her. Somewhere deep within, a fire began to rekindle, and she resolved to uncover the truth behind the mirror's cryptic warnings and find a way to protect those she loved. The village square was packed that morning, the murmurs of the crowd rising like restless waves. Word had spread that Tokoyo had called for a public gathering, a daring act that both intrigued and unnerved the villagers. Ebo stood near the elders, his expression smug, as if certain that Tokoyo's defiance would only deepen her downfall. Tokoyo arrived with Kofi by her side, her posture straight and her eyes blazing with determination. She carried the mirror, its ornate frame gleaming in the sunlight. Gasps rippled through the crowd at the sight of it. By now, tales of the cursed mirror had fueled their fears. "Today," Tokoyo began, her voice clear and unwavering, "I stand here not to defend myself, but to reveal the truth." She turned to the elders. "You've judged me without evidence, based on the lies of a man who seeks to control me. But this mirror holds more truth than any of his words." Ebo laughed, his voice dripping with derision. "More tricks, Tokoyo? Your theatrics won't save you. Admit your sins, and perhaps I'll show mercy. Ignoring him, Tokoyo placed the mirror on a wooden pedestal in the center of the square. "This mirror is no ordinary object," she said. "It reveals not just reflections, but the true essence of a person." She turned to the crowd. "You've called me a curse, a liar, and worse, but let this mirror show who truly holds darkness in their heart." Skepticism and curiosity gripped the villagers as Tokoyo gestured for Ibo to step forward. "If you are so confident in your righteousness, then face the mirror," she challenged. Ibo hesitated, his bravado faltering for the first time. "This is ridiculous," he snapped, but the crowd began to murmur, their eyes fixed on him. The elders exchanged glances, and one spoke up. "If you have nothing to hide, Ibo, prove it." Reluctantly, Ibo stepped in front of the mirror. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the surface rippled, and the reflection shifted. The crowd gasped as an image of Ibo appeared, not the confident, wealthy merchant they knew, but a twisted, snarling figure cloaked in shadows. The reflection revealed his greed, cruelty, and malice in stark detail. Ibo stumbled back, his face pale. "This is a trick," he yelled, but his protests were drowned out by the crowd's growing outrage. Tokoyo stepped forward. "This is the man who sought to ruin me. He tried to drown my brother, spread lies about my family, and poison this village with fear." Her voice rang out with conviction. "You've seen the truth. Now you must decide what kind of future you want for our village." The tide turned swiftly. Villagers who had once whispered against her now shouted for justice. The elders, visibly shaken, declared that Ibo's actions would be investigated and he would face exile if proven guilty. His power broken, Ibo fled the square, his threats dissolving into the wind. As the crowd dispersed, Senna lingered, her face a mix of shame and regret. She approached Tokoyo hesitantly. I let envy blind me," she admitted. "You deserve better from me." Tokoyo studied her childhood friend for a long moment before nodding. "Envy is a heavy burden. I hope you choose to let it go." That evening, as the sun set over the village, Tokoyo returned the mirror to its resting place. For the first time, her reflection stared back at her with nothing but calm. In the days that followed, Tokoyo's life began to change. The villagers, now free from Ibo's influence, sought to make amends. Kwame, the blacksmith, revealed his admiration for her strength and resilience, offering both friendship and a partnership in her weaving business. Her grandmother's health improved, buoyed by the renewed sense of community, and Kofi's laughter once again filled their home. Though the journey had been painful, Tokoyo found peace in the knowledge that she had stood firm against injustice and reclaimed her life. The mirror, once a source of fear, now sat quietly in her home, a reminder of the courage it took to reveal the truth and the strength it gave her to embrace her own. In the months that followed, life in the village transformed for Tokoyo and her family. Freed from Ibo's oppressive shadow, Tokoyo's weaving business flourished. Her vibrant fabrics, now carrying a reputation for resilience and truth, became sought after in neighbouring villages. With her earnings, she sent Kofi to school, ensuring a brighter future for her beloved brother. The village, once fractured by fear and envy, began to heal. Villagers who had doubted Tokoyo now came to her, offering apologies and support. Nana, the herbalist, became a close friend and mentor, teaching Tokoyo the medicinal properties of plants, adding another dimension to her skill set. Senna, once driven by jealousy, chose a different path. Humbled by Tokoyo's forgiveness, she dedicated herself to repairing their friendship and serving the community. Her transformation stood as a quiet reminder of the power of second chances. As for Ibo, his downfall was swift and just. Stripped of his influence, he was banished from the village, left to reflect on his greed and cruelty. His absence brought peace to the community, and his name became a cautionary tale about the dangers of unchecked pride and malice. With time, Tokoyo's heart found solace in the companionship of Kwame, the steadfast blacksmith who had stood by her side in her darkest moments. Together, they built a life rooted in mutual respect and shared purpose, their bond a testament to the strength born of adversity. The mirror, once feared and misunderstood, now hung in Tokoyo's home as a symbol of her journey. It reminded her that truth and courage, no matter how painful, could dispel even the darkest shadows. In the end, the village learned an invaluable lesson. The path of truth is often steep, but its summit is where peace resides. Tokoyo's story became a cherished tale, passed down through generations, teaching that resilience and integrity can overcome even the greatest trials, and that kindness, though often tested, remains the greatest strength of all. What did you take away from Tokoyo's journey? Her story reminds us that truth and resilience can shine even in the darkest of times. Have you ever faced challenges where standing up for what's right felt impossible? How did you overcome them? Share your experiences in the comments. We'd love to hear your thoughts.